What is really going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. How are you? I hope everyone's good. I hope it has been a glorious spring day and that the antibodies of COVID and or the microchip is working its way into your system just as planned. I got my appointment for my first dose of Pfizer. Does it come with health care? No. But I'm excited. I'm like, I'm happy. I did my first stand-up show this weekend in like forever. And that felt good. I hope I didn't get COVID from one of those dirty comics. But we have such a good show for you this evening. I'm so pumped. NATO Green is here, as always, such a treat, as well as Professor Robin D.G. Kelley, the author of Freedom Dreams, the author of Hammer and Hoe, all about Black labor organizing in the South, and just like a thinker and intellectual that you need to know about, who has who's imaginative, who's radical, who's creative, who wrote a whole biography of Thelonious Monk. He is here. I'm super honored to have him here with us and super honored that you guys are here. If you are on YouTube, click that like button right now. And hey, why don't you subscribe? And hey, why don't you ring the bell so that you know when we're going live and you can rush from your little woodworking project in whatever garage you don't have over to the computer to watch live. Do that. And also, if you're on Twitch, follow the channel. Subscribe right now. Become a subscriber. Use your Bezos bucks for good. And subscribe on Twitch. It's super easy. Another exciting thing, we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. We're talking about Joe Manchin. We're talking about QAnon. We're talking about efforts to recall Governor Newsom here in California. We're going to talk about stopping fascism with Black Marxism. That's right. But we're also going to be digging into the Amazon defeat of the Union Drive in Bessemer, Alabama, what that means, why it happened. I think you all know that NATO Green is a union organizer and that we have had Jane McAlevey, who's also a union organizer and an author, on this show before. So we're going to dig into all of that after our show for all the patrons. That means if you want to be part of that discussion right now, you got to become a patron. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. It's going to be so good. Robin just wrote something on Bessemer. NATO has, I know, been doing a lot of thinking on it, and I'm excited to hear because it was a huge blow. It felt bad, and I think we all are eager to know where we go from here and why. Like, why did it fail? Why did this Union Drive fail, other than the fact that Amazon is evil and they will stop at nothing? That's obvious. But in that vein of patrons, it is time to thank all of the patrons out there who've been given $10 or more, as well as big tippers and subs on Twitch. You guys, this is Lay Fart Song. Thank you to Mugly W, Dan S, Chris L for joining the Orchata Armada. Yes, bitch. Thank you, big tippers, Brent A, Gary H, Joseph L, Karen K. For the Twitch subscribers, Magnum Satan, Good for Gabby, Verity NS, Becca 1359. And Poe the frickin' Rican Dragon, thank you so much for being, again, a subscriber on Twitch for another month. And also, oh wait, oh no, Joseph L? I can't remember what I said. I'm just gonna dance it out. Dance it out, dance it out, dance it out. I already did this. Okay. And that is the fart song, you guys. Thank you so much for being patrons. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. If you want to get this bonus content, we're talking about Bessemer. And we may, if we have time, talk about Mr. Tucker Carlson. Just wear a hood, buddy. Just put it on, okay? Just do it. And let's get into what we're all bitching about. You guys, this is What Are You Bitching About Now? Okay, my turn. You guys let me know in the comments. But here's what I will say. I've been talking to a journalist friend of mine who did a whole story about how pandemics are formed, how to get the next pandemic. It was called Virus Hunters on Vice. If you have Showtime, watch it. It's very good. Essentially, the fact that we're now sort of out of this pandemic, maybe just the United States, even though we totally don't deserve all of these vaccines that we've gotten, and we really should spread a generic vaccine to the rest of the world, we're starting to leave this moment of hell. And it is important to stop the next pandemic before it starts. And what I'm bitching about is the fact that all the things we knew were a problem before continue to be a problem, and yet no one's seriously talking about it. And that is the fact that all these nar bat diseases come from massive deforestation, and the fact that we have urban sprawl and crops and cultures, and global financial capitalism requiring the monocrops and cultures, industrial meat farming, and everything else that is destroying our planet systematically. And then, lo and behold, is destroying the animals and all the little pecking order. You got the bunnies, and you got the bigger bunnies, and then the biggest bunnies. You know what I'm saying? Like all the other animals who are our buffer between nar bat virus and the reason we can't go outside. And that has not been addressed. The fact that it is thanks to the massive degradation of our climate and environment that we're insured to get not just a virus this bad, but far worse. They called it in this episode of Vice a dress rehearsal for a future pandemic. And I'm scared. Now, I know you guys are saying, why, Francesca, why are you scared? You know, why not just be joyful? I'm happy. I'm joyful. I want the shot. Stick me, please. But also, I'm scared for the future. Can I not freak out about the future? I think we should. So anyway, we need to stop the deforestation. We need to absolutely pay countries like Brazil to not deforest the Amazon. We need to think about this globally. Obviously, reinvesting in the World Health Organization is a start. But there's so much more we need to do. The internationalism involved, the amount of coordination, the thinking about our planet as interconnected, the basic shit. So I'm bitching about that. I'm bitching about the fact that, like, we're going to have another virus. It's going to be bad. And who knows, we still might not have universal healthcare in the United States. So, yeah, that's what I'm bitching about. And to join me in my little den of bitching, I'd love to bring in a comedian and union organizer and mixologist without a funny mustache or fedora, although I'm sure he has a fedora close by. Please welcome Mr. NATO Green. NATO.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
What's going on?
I have hats, but I don't have a fedora. I have like a
Page
doozy hat.
Schoolboy. Yeah.
Whatever that I got from a tweed shop in Edinburgh. Naturally. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. What are you bitching about this fine Sunday evening?
Well, so today I got the second shot of the Pfizer vaccine.
Right.
I think it's misleading the Johnson & Johnson is one shot, Pfizer is two shots. It's the Johnson and the Pfizer. It's not the Pfizer and Johnson. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you've made this case fervently on the show before, and I
know,
stand by it.
I'm committed to it. Yeah. So yeah. I'm gonna make it a thing. So I got the second shot of the Pfizer today, and and it's like a real toss up. Like, do you? It's really hard to wrestle with. Like, oh, on the one hand, like my arm could hurt, and maybe I'll be sleepy for a few hours, or everyone I love could die. Like, oh, I'm on the fence. Like, how do I know whether to take the vaccine or not? And so then I got there, and they're like, do you, be like, keep an eye out if you're gonna you might have side effects, like you might feel itchy. And I was like, well, but I'm always like on the verge of dying of ashiness. And they're like, not like that. And they're like, and you might get sleepy. And I was like, I'm a father of twins. Like, of course I'm fucking sleepy. What are we talking about? So, um,
Yeah,
uh,
itchy, sleepy. This is what
itchy,
are they?
sleepy, like that's my permanent state. So then, but what I'm bitching about is that, like honestly, I was so moved by the operation. Like I was at Moscone Center in San Francisco, the big convention center, and it's just this well-oiled machine of like, people waving you along, and everyone's happy, and it's like, there's adequate signage, which I appreciate, and like it's
Mm.
uplifting but non-threatening music. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm, mm.
what is love? Baby, don't hurt me,
Oh,
like that.
great song.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Great
Uh,
vaccination
it
song.
was a great vaccination song. And so like it was just I got emotional that like
What
we're
are
at
drugs?
yeah.
Baby, don't hurt me. Don't
I got
hurt me. Sorry.
and then like
You got emotional.
I got emotional, like even like when I got the first shot, I immediately like dropped my vaccination card on the ground, and like a homeless person was like, "Hey, you dropped this," um, and so like I took pains to like put it in a special place so I wouldn't lose it, and then I still forgot it when I went back down there, and they're like, "Don't worry, honey, we got you. We'll give you another card." So I was just like, I got emotional by the whole thing, and so what I'm bitching about is that they didn't have a crying station at the vaccination site, so that you could like, for those of us who are just like overcome with the emotion of like what a like hellish year and battle this has been, going through
Yeah.
this pandemic, and like how much of the like grief and loss that we've been holding at bay, and to see the light at the end of the tunnel and the beginning of hope,
Yeah.
that I just needed a little
If you're
spot to go
going to
cry.
get emotional, please step
Yeah.
to your left.
Follow the blue arrows to the crying quadrant.
Yeah.
So
Let the emotionally crippled through and
yeah.
stand aside.
Yeah. Uh, go into the separate chamber under the cardboard cutout of Anthony Fauci. Like, why wasn't that option available to me?
Just Anthony Fauci in like pillow form, and you just kind of
Yeah.
hug, like roll in it.
Yep.
That's amazing. And so who are you gonna like unabashedly hug first? Like just no restraint.
Um, I mean, well, you, am I going to hug you
Oh
first?
wow, that's crazy. Thank you. I'm so honored.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
No, I mean, I think, uh, I mean, I've realized that I need to be, in this Me Too era, I need to do better communication about hugging, and so I need to be like, hey, I'm available for hugs if anyone is interested in hugging. If not, that's totally cool. But if you're into it, I'm here for hugs.
I'll get you that shirt.
Yeah.
That's a very good bitchuation right there.
So that means that in 2 weeks from now, according to the CDC, like if you're 2 weeks post vaccination, you can be indoors with another household with masks off. And so like, because you know how I get down, like I'm like, I've only been cooking for my immediate family for the last year. And so what it means is that in 2 weeks, I get to start hosting people for dinner again and cook shit that my kids won't eat. And so I'm starting to plan like who do I want to have for dinner?
Yeah, this is where there's a lot of friend circles here. This is very political.
Yeah.
Who do you invite first? The Watsons or the Jensens or the
All
Flotsams
that.
or the Jetsons. I don't know why. I think I'm just talking about Ursula's eels.
Sure.
Congrats, NATO. I'm excited for you. But we have to get into this week. A lot happened. Okay.
Also,
Ladies
I'm not drinking everyone tonight because I was told to stay hydrated.
It's going to be a long ass show.
Yeah.
That's why.
Maybe
I'm
I'll
very
start drinking
excited.
later. All right, go ahead. The week where?
The week where, okay, first of all, a lot of things happened. Biden called for gun reform on something called ghost guns. What? Biden unveiled a big old budget that actually increased military spending. A House ethics panel is investigating Matt Gaetz, even though they totally all looked at the nudes that he had on his phone. Prince Philip cut down at the tender age of 99. The rapper DMX dies of a heart attack. Iran nuclear talks are resuming, and the Amazon warehouse vote in Bessemer, Alabama fell short. But here are our top stories. This is the week where. This was the week where West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin once again proved he's the aging pop star of Congress, trying to stay relevant by playing both sides of the aisle in the same way that Madonna kissed both Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera at the 2003 VMAs. And in that analogy, Democrats are clearly Christina Aguilera. Total short end of that stick, man. Nobody cared. This week, Manchin said that his recommitment to the very imaginary center was spurred by Trump supporters' January 6th attack on the Capitol. Take a look.
January 6th changed me, and I was very clear with everybody. I never thought in my life, I never read in history books to where our form of government had been attacked at our seat of government, which is Washington, D.C., at our capital, by our own people. Now, the British did it, but not Americans. So something told me, wait a minute, pause, hit the pause button, something's wrong. You can't have this many people split to where they want to go to war with each other.
So that is his rationale for why we need to work together as Republicans and Democrats. See, Joe Manchin isn't a partisan hack, you guys, okay? He wanted the mob to hang Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi, all right? And it wasn't the months of lies about a stolen election that led to divisions. It was the Democrats who couldn't just share the presidency. Just share it.
It's such a, I mean, so partly it's like before January 6th, he said that he opposed ending the filibuster, and he opposed the Green New Deal, and he opposed Medicare for all, and he opposed the $15 an hour minimum wage. But then January 6th changed him, and he still opposes all those things, but for different reasons. So, and it's so depressing that, there was this like massive effort to like turn out voters and elect Joe Biden president and enact an agenda and change things and solve our fundamental problems. And it turns out that we just made Joe Manchin the president, like, because of how the filibuster works. That because like 6 fucking oil barons in Appalachia are like, no, we don't want a Green New Deal. Then the rest of us can't have it because of how the filibuster works in the Senate. So Joe Manchin wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post this week about the filibuster, and he said. And he said, I have always said if I can't go home and explain it, I can't vote for it. So we're stuck with garbage because Joe Manchin is bad at explaining stuff to people in West Virginia. Like, I'm sure that Joe Manchin listens to the Bitchuation Room, and so I will volunteer to do it. I will volunteer on his behalf to go to West Virginia. Let's make it a reality show. Left-wing Jew from San Francisco is ready to roam Appalachia, explaining socialist politics to the people of West Virginia, and we'll film it. We'll be able to fund the Green New Deal that way. And it'll be very entertaining.
Yeah, Netflix views will absolutely fund the Green New Deal. First of all, it's coal barons, NATO. Okay, Appalachia, coal.
What did I say?
Oil? I feel like that's a little off.
Did I say oil? I meant coal.
You meant, yeah, exactly. Get it straight. Get your fossil fuels together. No, he did write this op-ed, you guys. I don't know if you read it. And he said, my favorite part of it, in addition to that he couldn't explain stuff, was that he said, if we change the filibuster, like the reason we're in problems now is because we've been changing the filibuster. And if we change it now, quote, our nation may never see stable governing again. And I'm like, buddy, do you know where you work? Is this day one? Are you just getting your, acquainted with the Senate chambers? Here, let me show you where the Senate chamber meets. Oh, sorry. It's been overrun by a mob, radicalized by the Republican Party into believing that Democratic votes don't count. Oops. Didn't check in with that. I love this take from Harold Meyerson of The American Prospect, writing in response to this filibuster bipartisan BS that Manchin said he's like now not supporting reforming or changing the filibuster. he writes, the filibuster was and is an effect of polarization, not its cause. If Manchin could actually discern the difference, he'd note that the steadied rightward gallop of the GOP has eliminated the middle ground on which bipartisan could sometimes take root. And that rightward gallop has been spurred not by the filibuster, but by the growth of counterfactual right-wing media and even more counterfactual right-wing social media, the counterfactual presidency of Donald Trump, and the growing racial, gender, religious, and cultural intolerance within the Republican base, fearful of the decline of white male Christian traditionalist hegemony and the apocalyptic stoking of those fears by Republican politicians and media. At the end.
Tell it.
Hell yeah. It's just, I love though, like his idea. You see him in this interview, right? The interview we just played for you. He's so clueless. He's so unsure of like who he's playing to, why he's playing to them, whether it's helping his brand, does he need to start a TikTok? Like, he's just sort of stabbing in the dark. And yeah, I don't think he's explained anything to West Virginians in a long time.
Yeah, I always occasionally I play this game of like the follow-up question that I wish a reporter would ask.
Yes.
And the follow-up question I wish a reporter would ask Joe Manchin is, have you, in your 30 years in elected office, ever met a single voter who said, my number one priority for government, the one thing that I want the most is bipartisanship? Like that's not, no one cares. Like people don't want bipartisanship. People want problem solved.
Yes.
And, and so.
Or what about the filibuster? Like, hey, sir,
right.
Excuse me. Look, I can't put food on the table, but
I'm really concerned about Senate
we gotta
rules.
Be protected.
I'm really concerned about who's going to vote for cloture. That's what I'm worried about.
What about budget reconciliation?
I have the black lung, but what about that cloture vote? It's like, what are you talking about?
I can't reconcile my finances, but who will reconcile the budget? No, it doesn't happen. And that's the thing, obviously, if you guys don't know, the filibuster is, the cock block of progress. It is preventing everything from H.R. 1, voting rights protection, to the PRO Act, supporting unionization in the country. Anything we want passed somehow goes through Joe Manchin's thick, empty skull. That's what we've decided. Anyway, someone mentioned in the comments that he's going to change his tune in about a week. I totally agree. So this will be probably irrelevant in, I don't know, half an hour. We'll see who else gives him an op-ed. But let's move on. This was the week where a guy named Ron Watkins, one of the hosts of the white nationalist misogynist conspiracy theorist website 8chan, or 8kun or Kun, I don't know what it is, essentially confessed in an HBO documentary called Q Into the Storm that he is actually Q. This was years after the documentarian Cullen Hoback traced the origins and development of the QAnon conspiracy theory. And here's the moment in the documentary where Ron Watkins low-key confesses while on video chat to Hoback.
Something shocking. Ron hadn't just been participating in Q research. It sounded like he was leading it.
Yeah, so thinking back on it, it was basically 3 years of intelligence training, teaching normies how to do intelligence work. It's basically what I was doing anonymously before, but never as Q.
See that smile? Ron had slipped up. He knew it, and I knew it. And after 3 tireless years of cat and mouse, well...
Never as Q, I promise.
Never as Q. Okay.
Because I'm not cute. And it never was.
Oh, man.
Okay, so what? So if you were just listening, that is the moment after so many years of interviewing this guy, Ron Watkins, who runs the site 8chan, that, and he was denying that he even knew what Q was. He had no idea. That he was basically saying, no, yeah, I've been on the Q research forums. I've posted anonymously to the forums. I've posted anonymously to Twitter about Q. And I've basically been doing this for years and years, trying to train normies, i.e. QAnon believers, into thinking that they're doing military intelligence, essentially with the things that I post. And then there's an awkward moment where he's like, but not as Q, not as the actual Q, and then laughs. And so that's when you heard sort of the uncomfortable laughter of this documentarian and this guy. And it was one of the interesting things. I didn't watch the whole doc, but I watched some of it, which is that this guy, Ron Watkins, and his dad, who are just Nazis pretty much, they want credit. Like, he secretly, like any idiot villain, they don't want to just go unnoticed. They want the accolades, right? They want the acclaim, and they want recognition for the fact that they duped a whole bunch of people. The biggest part about this, though, is, do you think QAnon supporters give a shit? No. According to Vice, none of the main QAnon influencer accounts have mentioned the documentary. And in one of the few discussion threads on Gab, only one person posted, quote, Q is a group of genius-level military intelligence with very high security clearances. There is zero chance Ron or Q is directly involved with the operation. Now, I love that because it just shows that QAnon followers don't just think that like Trump is hunting pedophile Democrats, but that there's such a thing as genius military intelligence. Like, the U.S. didn't invade two countries to try and get Osama bin Laden, only to find him in neither of those countries. You're like, how intelligent are we talking here? Like, no, they're like, but it's like a special unit. Just a special unit, dude. NATO?
You just want the Scooby-Doo unmasking, I would have gotten away with it except for you pesky kids.
Yes. Dude, if you watch this doc, the dad really does look like a Scooby-Doo character, just like overly parted and gelled hair. It's always that in like sort of a tan jacket. Same vibe.
What was his name? Ron Watkins? And he was was he in the tundra doing this interview? What was happening?
So he lives in Japan. He was also used to live in the Philippines on a pig farm, apparently. And the documentary is fascinating. And his dad, he and his dad essentially, there was an original Q poster someone did post initially. But what basically the theories now, according to a lot of people who write and study about the conspiracy theory, is that these guys, once they wrested control of 8chan, because it wasn't actually their initial platform, they wrested control from the founder, that they were the ones perpetuating all and doing all the so-called drops. This is a writer for the Daily Dot writes, he's been tracking this a while, this guy Mike Rothschild. He says, there are a few other people who could have and would have made Q drops other than the person who ran the place where they were posted. QAnon can't exist without the Watkinsons, and 8kun without Q's devotees. It may as well not exist. Like, their site exists only because of Q also. So it is a little bit of a it was the groundskeeper. Because he was there keeping the grounds. And that makes sense.
As I listen to you, I realize that I don't understand anything that you're talking about. This is such a, I really, I'm generally aware of this stuff, but I've really resisted it. And so I'm I don't know what 8chan or drops or Gab, the idea of putting in the energy, it feels like the same as how I've avoided understanding pickup artist lingo and the difference between different subsects of men's rights activists.
Yep.
I don't have, I know some people who really like to spend time understanding what's going on in the right wing, but I got shit to do, man. I've got cocktails that need mixing. So
I think you're healthier for it, but yes, I agree with you. It was funny because back in 2016, we as Newsbrook did a sketch called Alt-Right Rocks, and Matt Lieb convinced us. He was like, no, we should do a sketch making fun of the alt-right. I swear, it's this up and coming Nazi thing. They're on forums, they're on 4chan, they're on 8chan, and we were like, what chan, who chan, what? I don't know, what are you talking about? Why is it chan? Is that someone's last name. Like it was, and we were like, let's not do that. I don't want to talk about that. And then we did it, and the sketch did really well. It was very funny. We were making fun of how racist, misogynistic. This is where Gamergate grew out of. This is where, again, QAnon conspiracies, all the most like heinous, misogynistic, and racist ideologies are being born on these websites. And then Trump won the election. And everyone knew who Richard Spencer was, and our sketch was the least funny shit ever because it just became real. We were like, oh God. Anyway, Q, if you're listening, fuck you, dude. Okay? Yeah, I said it.
Oh,
and yeah,
spicy take, dog.
Spicy take. And also, it bothers me that he's Hapa, that he's half Asian. Like, I'm sorry, it just bothers me as a half Asian.
Oh, come get your people, Francesca.
I need to come get half of my people. Which is all of my people. But yes, it's very annoying. All right, we'll move on. Everyone should watch that documentary. It's fascinating. It's gross. It's weird. It's interesting. But yeah, try and get into it. Finally, this was the week where we discovered celebrity and former athlete Caitlyn Jenner is discussing a possible run as a Republican for California's governorship should the efforts to recall current Governor Gavin Newsom actually succeed. That's right. Caitlyn Jenner, the transgender Olympian, is going to be a candidate in a party whose main concern is stopping transgender people in sports. It feels like a little self-defeating. Is she just going to lose on purpose? Like, it's unclear where the 7D chess happens here, but it might not be a terrible idea. Remember in 2003, Governor Gray Davis was recalled and replaced by Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger, proving that we Californians are liberal, but if you're famous and have muscles, we'll follow you to the ends of the earth. Just give us your diet tips or whatever. Thus far, if you guys don't know, there's a petition to recall Governor Gavin Newsom. It has yet to qualify for the ballot. Signatures are being verified. Then the finance department has to produce a cost estimate because, like, somehow there's still money left.
Don't skip over the most important detail about the recall campaign.
What is that?
My favorite part of the recall campaign against Governor Gavin Newsom is that the recall campaign is being run by an eye patch wearing veteran political consultant whose real name is Randy Economy. Is it too on the nose for Republican grandstanding about loss of commerce due to COVID restrictions to be named literally horny for the free market? Randy Economy. People said we wouldn't have anything to joke about Trump, but here comes his crack campaign team of thirsty profit accumulation, Two Mess Invisible Hand, and Bill Cosby.
Randy Economy.
That's his name. Yeah.
You've got to run for office with a name. Who named? Where? How? I really need to know the origin of the Economy family.
He's from one of the Palm Springs economies.
Yeah. Was it shortened from like Econowitz or something? Like, like when he came over.
Is this his Ellis Island name?
It's his Ellis Island name. Oh God. So yeah, obviously Governor Gavin Newsom is saying it's a Republican recall effort, and yes, it has a lot to do with Republicans in the state thinking that he didn't do a good job in terms of shutting down the state and trying to keep people safe. Basically, Huntington Beach wants to be Miami Beach. Like, they want their own Governor Ron DeSantis, someone who has the decency to lie to them about COVID deaths. Just lie. Just be tan and lie. Cook the books. But there are some people who don't like Newsom, i.e. the two people you see on screen right now, for other reasons. NATO, what do you make of this entire recall effort?
Look, I mean, it's like Newsom was great at the beginning of the pandemic because he was listening to scientists, and then he started caving to political pressure. And it was like, we're reopening, we're locking down again, we're reopening, we're locking down again. It just felt like they were trying to control the pandemic using the rhythm method. Newsom, like Gavin Newsom is new to the sort of statewide and national imagination, but he was elected mayor of San Francisco in 2003. So like we've been dealing with his bullshit for a long time, and Newsom thinks that he's Christian Bale Batman, but he's really Val Kilmer Batman, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, yes.
You know, and so before he was in political life, he owned a wine shop in the Marina district of San Francisco. It was like a bougie wine store for like men with sweater vests. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and women in yoga pants and strollers. I know.
Women in yoga, right? And it was just like, and the name of the company is Plump Jack, which is the term for ejaculating from a limp penis. It's a technical term. So. Like I
can't tell which of that sentence is a lie and which is real. It's actually called Plump Jack.
It is actually called Plump Jack. Yes.
Damn.
The definition is made up, but that's really the name is Plump Jack.
Okay, because I was gonna just Google that right now, and I don't know what I would have found. Anywho,
you don't want to no one Google ejaculating from a limp penis. I think we can all agree that would be a bad idea.
This is, by the way, we're going to do Yahoo answers and questions because Yahoo questions is going away, but I feel like that's a really good Yahoo question. Can you ejaculate from a limp penis? This is a serious show, you guys.
We're very smart.
We're very smart. Yeah, I mean, he's enlisting a lot of support, like Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris, which arguably are not the same politician, but both support Newsom. I
do think it's like I don't think people, kids today don't remember the recall in 2003, and like because not only did we elect Governor Schwarzenegger, but the way that the recall ballot works is that there's no primary, and so it's a 2-question ballot. Do you want to recall the governor? And if yes, who should the new governor be? And there were like 60 candidates, and you got to vote for all of them. And so Schwarzenegger was the one who won. There was some like establishment Democratic candidate, this guy Cruz Bustamante, who like was just some party hack that no one liked. But also like Larry Flint ran in that election.
Yes.
Gary Coleman from Different Strokes ran in that election.
Yes.
Like it was ridiculous. But part of the problem, I don't think Newsom is not actually going to get recalled because he's still pretty popular. And the state is way more Democratic than it was in 2003. And he's done better stuff and people like him more. Like core Democratic constituencies still like him more than anyone ever liked Gray Davis. Like with Gray Davis, at best, people were like, I guess so. Like,
right.
But
my mom still likes Gavin Newsom, which is, she's a barometer for, she's like Judy Woodruff on PBS and Gavin Newsom. Very, very middle of the road. And so far he doesn't have any sex scandals, although he did sleep with Kimberly Guilfoyle many times, probably.
They were married.
And that doesn't mean anything, but yes, they were also married.
So Kimberly Guilfoyle is currently stooping
yes.
Donald Trump Jr. And this is something that I do want you to Google. Bitchuation Room listeners, if you haven't seen it, just Google Gavin Newsom, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Harper's Bazaar. Because
we go to this photo once every 6 months.
Because in 2004, like there was this, when Newsom and Guilfoyle were married still, there was this, this is how ridiculous it was at the time. There was a big like glossy photo spread in Harper's Bazaar with a photo shoot of them in like formal wear, like him in a tuxedo, her in an evening gown, lying on the ground, like on a rug in a mansion. It looked like it was the epitome of all dressed up and nowhere to go. Like clearly you have come from too much money if you have formal wear, if you have lying on the ground formal wear. Do you know what I mean? Like if you if you had to
lying on the ground formal wear is just,
you know what I mean?
Also,
like if you were
he wants to be Batman. He wants to be Christian Bale Batman. Yeah. He's there already. He's like, let's do the scene where what was her name? What was Basinger's name? Damn it. It's like
that was Basinger was in Michael Keaton Batman.
No, I know the best Batman, obviously.
It depends. The love interest in the Christian Bale Batman was Katie Holmes in the first one, and then the second one they had the same character played by Maggie Gyllenhaal. What's up, nerds? I'm here for you. And they didn't even comment on it. They were like, you know what? We've had it with Katie Holmes. We're just going to bring in Maggie Gyllenhaal, who looks
She
totally
can't
different,
act, sadly.
playing the same character.
Vicky Vale, yes, thank you, Neon Neil. What a name! What a name! Such a great name. Anyway, that's what he was trying to reenact on his carpet. It's a disgusting image. Please look it up right now. Nato, we got to move on. We have such a great guest, and I'm so happy to have him here. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about this moment in Black freedom, what the BLM movement means, what and what it has meant in the last few years. We're going to talk about Black Marxism. We're going to talk about Bessemer a little bit later on. This is The Sitch. And joining us, he is a professor of history at UCLA and contributing editor for the Boston Review. He's the author of several books, including Freedom Dreams, The Black Radical Imagination, and Hammer and Hoe, Alabama Communists During the Great Depression. Please welcome Robin D.G. Kelley.
Hey, Francesca. Hey, Nato. How you doing?
Hi, Robin. So good to have you here.
Yeah, no, I'm honored. You know,
does the DG stand for this guy?
My God.
Yeah, there's all kinds of speculations on what the DG stands for.
Nato, out the gate, embarrassing me? Are you serious?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm here for. I'm trying to make you look smart. I thought Hammer and Hoe was about MC Hammer's girlfriends.
You know, that's so funny. That's hilarious because
that's funny.
Because that was the joke in 1990. That was, I mean, in other words, it has been circulating for a long time since that book came out like 30 years ago.
That's about my generation. I'm dating myself now.
That's exactly. I love how Robin's like, that's really funny. You should say that joke I've heard a million times because.
No, I used to tell it. I mean, so, you know.
Robin, you were also part of the Life After Capitalism conference in 2004. Yes. That's in part how I know you from the New York days. And now that we are once again after capitalism, phew, crisis averted.
We should drink some champagne together now it's over, you know.
Yes. Let's just imagine. But speaking to that, and part of what one of your very famous books is titled is about radical imagination, and I feel like we're in a moment where in some ways we sort of live in this future. We're like, oh, we see the ways that we're moving forward, and yet we're so far behind, and fascism is rearing its head in ways we've never experienced, at least in my lifetime, before. But neoliberal capitalism is failing. We need new ideas and better ideas. They're right there. We need imagination, and we need historians and thinkers like yourself. And so this conversation, I think, is going to go a little bit above my head intellectually, but I want, and I think, but I want to, you know, make all of your work and your thought accessible for folks who have not been exposed to it yet. And this week, of course, we've got another thing that's happening is it's the second week of the Derek Chauvin trial, the former police officer who killed George Floyd. And you have a new book that you're working on about the Black Lives Matter movement, this surge that we saw last year, the millions who took to the streets. And I was just going to pick up on this idea that I think so much of the rage that we saw was also like how many generations are going to have to fight this exact same fight. Mm-hmm. That aren't we past this? It's the year 2020, right? And here you have people being lynched in the streets, unarmed Black men lynched in the streets. And it feels like we're at this crossroads, and we're either like, look, either you're committed to equality and you're committed to liberation for Black Americans, you're committed to their right to vote, to live freely, or you're committed to their subjugation. Like, which is it? How's it? And so, like, how do you situate this moment in sort of the broader history of Black freedom, of civil rights struggles? Like, where are we?
Right. That's a good question. I should also just clarify that my book is actually about how we got to the moment of 2020, which means that it really is about a longer history, going back really to the 18th century. So it's kind of walk through to understand kind of, you know, I take people who were killed by the police or killed by intimate partners, and through a kind of historical autopsy, go back to the real cause of death, which sometimes is really a couple hundred years ago, or in some cases 50 years ago. So that said, that's a really excellent question, because I think, there's a couple things to think about. One is that, we're governed by ideology, and this ideology, the ideology of white supremacy now, is not so much based on the presumption of white superiority. It's actually based on, 21st century white supremacy is based on a kind of circulation of a myth of white subjugation, of white suffering, so replacement theory is all about, I'm the victim. And that's why you can't, it's hard to find, well, you could find some white folks, but most white folks, you ask them, do you want equality? The answer is, we have equality. It's not that we want to maintain our power. It's that we have equality. In fact, if anything, I'm the one that's suffering. And because of that, anti-racist white people know better. But because of that, what we end up getting is a kind of reaction to social justice and anti-racist projects that actually can make life better for everybody. I mean, it's just fundamental. I mean, imagine a world without racism would give us a better system of medicine, a better system of a better economy, not just fairness for those who are subjugated, but actually would raise all boats. But that's not the case. The other thing is, in terms of the way the Republican Party is functioning, yes, they're going straight up for voter suppression. They have been doing it for a long time. I'm old enough I don't remember a year when there wasn't some voter suppression. I mean, in the 1980s and 90s, they were burning churches, because people are registering voters. Voter suppression was just fundamental. I mean, when Jesse Jackson ran for office in 84 and in 88, voter registration was the main project that he was involved in and was being pushed back. And here's the thing that may get me in trouble. I believe that the Republican Party isn't just interested in disenfranchising Black and brown people. It's definitely racial, but it's also class. And what they want to do is reduce the electorate, period. They want to shrink it. Sure. Because imagine you've got people who vote Republican who would support Democratic policies. They don't want them to vote either. And that's not new. I mean, the Gilded Age was a period when, the same time they're disenfranchising Black people in the South, they're imposing property laws to reduce the franchise in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, throughout the country. So this is just basic. This is basically the history of the United States of America. It's one that pretends to be a democracy. And those who try to make it a democracy are the ones who are often seen as the problems, the takers, the job stealers, that sort of thing.
Right.
It's interesting, like to see the right wing intellectual apparatus gin up, like National Review and some of the right wing think tanks have been putting stuff out of like, we obviously don't want everybody to vote. I mean, we can't let everybody vote. We all agree that we shouldn't let 5-year-olds vote. So once we're in a conversation about limiting people voting, then where are we? I think one of the things that you're saying, what it raises for me is like when we think about sort of racism at the moment in history, like we're talking, there's a conversation about anti-Asian violence, and there's a conversation about, mass incarceration and police violence against Black people, and like sort of how do you think about sort of locating all this stuff, those kind of analysis in what's happening with political economy?
Oh, you mean to the anti-racist analysis within political economy? Well, there's a couple of things. One is the way it's being done, and then two, it's the way I see it. And the way so part of the question is the way it's being done. There's a way in which currently anti-racist movements or movements against anti-Black racism, movements against anti-Asian racism, which of course has a very long history, are sometimes pitted against, movements for economic justice.
Right.
And it doesn't really make sense to me. But what ends up, but you can understand why. One is, you have kind of a liberal agenda that would find racist violence abhorrent, but they are not necessarily the ones who believe that there should be expansion of trade unions or socialism or single payer healthcare or even corporate accountability.
Mhm.
But they and that's why during Black Lives Matter, the evil scoundrel Jeff Bezos could drop a dime for him, but $10 million on all these Black organizations and anti-racist organizations, including Black Lives Matter. So in many ways, if you just take Ferguson, which is a great kind of laboratory, after the murder of Mike Brown on August 9, 2014, people were coming out in the streets for justice for Mike Brown to basically end policing as they knew it, but also because policing was part of the economic infrastructure that led to precarity in the first place. I mean, you're talking about a place where they use ticketing and citations to basically generate revenue, mostly from Black people in the suburb of St. Louis. This is North St. Louis,
Right.
North County. And these were citations and tickets that were just bogus, not having an expired registration on a car that's sitting in a driveway that doesn't even function, not mowing a lawn. And so that kind of pressure on the part of municipalities that are also giving huge tax breaks to companies to come to St. Louis, to North County, huge companies, and then basically make up for the loss of revenue through the taxation of Black and brown people.
Yeah.
And that's how the police work. The job of the police is to generate revenue. And one other side to this is that as they engage in forms of police brutality and violence that are deemed illegal, the city then has to have a settlement. And out of those settlements comes a whole other section or segment of finance capital, where finance capital actually through police brutality bonds then issues loans to cities that use basically municipal bonds to pay out these settlements.
Jesus.
And they make huge amounts of money off the debt service on the bonds. So there's a whole machine that's operating, and I guarantee you that my people in the movement for Black Lives and many of the activists there understand that and have been talking about this and talking about the intersection.
Yeah. And is that, it feels like one piece, and it feels like a discussion that we could have about what racial capitalism is, and really talking about the way that manifests in people's lives, like in Ferguson. But how do you understand racial capitalism? How do you break that down for your students? And for folks who are like, yeah, I've become a socialist and I believe in healthcare and a Green New Deal, but maybe because of my personal experience or because I don't understand how it works, like I don't link race into that analysis.
Right. And that has been the kind of Achilles heel, not for the last 50 years, but from the inception of capitalism and the critique of capitalism. And by race, it's not just anti-Black racism, but even, and this is one of the things that Cedric Robinson sort of teaches us, that, capitalism emerged within Europe, even before kind of imperialist expansion across the Atlantic, based on an understanding of people as differential. That is to say that that race is not always about skin color. In fact, it's amazing how much it's not about skin color. It's about assigning differential value to human life and labor. And that's why the Irish, for example, in early Europe in the transition to capitalism were like, the equivalent to like the Black subject. They were second-class citizens by virtue of the fact they're colonized. Jews, Roma. There's all kinds of ways that immigrant labor, and also anti-Asian violence precedes the formation of the United States itself. And so that's another way in which, again, it's an ideology that assigns differential value to human life and labor. And what does that translate into? It translates into a capitalism, to move it up to the present, that involves predatory lending that targets certain people because they're more vulnerable. Taxation, disfranchisement, a whole history of looting, the fact that property values in certain neighborhoods are simply less by virtue of the fact that certain bodies are in those neighborhoods. That is what we talk about racial capitalism. Because if capitalism were sort of pure and above racial difference, then there's no reason to have differential value based on race. We'd all be making the same terrible wages, and the value of our homes would be all the same. But that's not how it works. It has nothing to do with what people's behavior. It has to do with the projection of value in myths about people's behavior. And that's where we are. And so one last thing, we talk about universal policies like healthcare. Well, that's great. I mean, I'm all for Green New Deal, but the environment, the climate catastrophe affects Black and brown people, Indigenous people differently by where they're located geographically. Healthcare is different. I mean, in terms of whether you have access to a public hospital, and when you get to the hospital, do they assume that you're probably a drug addict and not having a crisis of sickle cell? So these kinds of things affect us all the time. So we've got to fight racism and capitalism at the same time.
That question comes up in my life as a union organizer, and is one of the reasons I like doing union work, is like some folks have the temptation to say we have to unify the workers, and so let's avoid divisive issues by race, like race. And what I have found in my life is that you can't unify the workers unless you directly engage with the ways that workers are divided, because it's like those divisions exist in the real world, and either we deal with them or the enemy does. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's like doing union organizing, you get to have like conversations that I've actually had in my career of like, I don't care if you don't like Filipinos, you are going to lose your health care if you don't go talk to them.
Right.
What are you gonna do about it?
Right. Well, this is also one of the problems that we all deal with. I mean, I've had many conversations with people in DSA and other organizations, and if you look at our history, there's a narrative that says it's like people of color, it's like Black people, all those people who are sort of marginalized are the ones that have to learn about their class. Like if you can only you can only organize those people and get them in, then we'd be okay. And the way to get them in is to tell them to forget about their racial issues. When in fact, it's been the other way around. It's been, Black working class organizations have been begging white folks, like, please, we want to organize you. You got to come with us. And every time there's these robust interracial movements, like in the 19th century, they collapse, not on the petard of Black nationalism, but they collapse on white racial identity politics. And it's not everyone, but that's how capital works. They're able to buy out with chump change white workers, to buy them out of the class. And this has been the real sticking point. And I just say, I'm very proud of the fact that it was Black labor organizers in the 19th century were the only ones, the most robust in terms of their opposition to the Chinese Exclusion Act. Meanwhile, everyone else like, yeah, we like the class, but not the Chinese. And Black labor organizers like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. Intersectionality, we've discussed on the show before. Learn about it, and also read Robin's books. I mean, look, Robin, years ago when you and I, 2004 Life After Capitalism conference, the discussions around prison abolition, around police abolition, were mostly fringe, not in a bad way, in a good way, in that they were happening in organizations like Critical Resistance, and others, and intellectuals like yourself. And now, thanks to this massive movement, the idea that we would think of safety as something beyond the police, that we would think of remaking them, that time and time and time again, they've proven themselves to be unworthy to police our, to be in our streets. My cat's going to jump in front of me right now. But like, what do you make of that? What do you make of the fact that it's gone so mainstream, that like just as at once we've got more fascism and more like, white knee-jerk reaction. Right. You've also got people like really imagining stuff differently.
Right. No, that's a very important, very beautiful point. And in fact, this is a lesson about the power of organizing. That organizing is not something you do in 3 months or a year. What culminated with the George Floyd protests or the Black Spring was decades. And so I think you mentioned critical resistance, but all these organizations that back in the day, Malcolm X grassroots movement, the Prison Activist Resource Center, Jericho movement, the Prison Moratorium Project, the Labor Community Strategy Center, Insight, which is Women of Color Against Violence, yes. and the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, they've been pushing an abolitionist politics since really the 1990s and got more sophisticated. And then Angela Davis publishes Our Prisons Obsolete, which when it came out, people were like, really? That's a crazy idea. Mm-hmm, and then you have thinkers like Ruth Wilson Gilmore and Mary McCabe and others who've been saying this over and over again and getting things in the press and getting discussions going. And so abolition moves from being a discourse about prisons per se as places to really thinking about the entire carceral system. So that's a lot of work. And then from that, you think, okay, we have the Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Rekia Boyd, and the responses to that form new organizations like the Dream Defenders, Black Youth Project, 100, Recharge Genocide, the Movement for Black Lives, just we can go on and on and on. Let Us Breathe Collective. These are organizations that in some ways, were the offspring, the progeny of those struggles in the 1990s. Yeah. And so part of my book is actually about that. It's sort of saying that, there's two streams. There's a stream of understanding racial capitalism as this long project, but it's also that the 1990s, that is opposition to a liberal regime. That is, it's always, we have to remember that it's our opposition to liberalism that produces the most robust radical movements. It was against LBJ and against Clinton. And we see just how incredibly robust and radical some of these movements were, which paved the foundation for what we have today. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is that, and this is bad news, and the bad news is that it's not, it's going to be easy to, not easy, but the co-optation of abolition is kind of going on right now. And so what's happening is that in the name of abolition, there are people who are substituting the old forms of reform and passing it off as new forms of public safety. And so the current trial around George Floyd, you have all these people who are like, oh yes, I can't wait. Let's make sure he gets at least 30 years, 40 years. And abolitionists saying, well, no, we're not fighting to prosecute, to put Derek Chauvin in cages. We're trying to remake public safety. And that is losing as people are saying, well, he is a bad apple. And what we need is oversight. We need better cops. We need better training. We need, altering use of force policy. We need body cams. We need banning chokeholds. That's going to be in the name of all this radical thinking. Right. And the election of Biden required kind of pushing the defund the police part off the table,
right?
For a minute.
Yeah.
So sometime last year, I was at my parents' house, and I was pooping, and
as you do,
and I was looking at the magazines that were next to the toilet, and I was thumbing through the magazines. They had an issue with The Economist, and so The Economist. This is the week before George Floyd was murdered. The Economist ran an article about how the Black Lives Matter movement had lost its way and had run out of gas. And it was like the biggest like miss. I mean, it was so stark to see that, in retrospect. And so I think you're talking about something like for people who are, not necessarily lifelong activists and haven't seen it go through many times. Could you sort of talk through this thing that like that the part of social movements that you see, like where you see people in the streets all over the country and like mass mobilization is the part that happens at the end, and that there's sort of the what do you call it? The rhizome, like the subterranean fungus that is growing, to create the basis for it that you don't see. I mean, you don't see unless you know to go look for it. But that's true of every social movement.
That is so true. And in fact, the fact that the press calls it the Black Lives Matter movement, as if Black Lives Matter was an actual organization. It sort of is, but sort of wasn't. It was more of an ethos. Because if you actually count the number of organizations that participated in that mobilization, many of which were very much alive and well and participated in the mobilization around Occupy, you're talking about hundreds of organizations, hundreds. And the movement for Black Lives, which is distinct from Black Lives Matter, is a coalition of over 100 organizations. Some of them are labor. And what's also the other myth is that this is presumption that Black Lives Matter was simply a group of young people responding to particular kinds of moments, murders. And I've been in many rooms with many organizers, and you're talking about a multi-generational movement. You've got people who came out of SNCC, who came out of the industrial concentration struggles of the 1970s, who are in the same room with kids who are 13, 14 years old. And that's what the movement really looks like. And all this knowledge, the Black Radical Congress, which goes back to like 1997, some of those same folks, Bill Fletcher, Organization for Black Struggle, these were organizations that were around back then and brought all that knowledge and experience into the room. And that's the true story. And that's not the story that the media wants to tell because it's too hard to tell. It makes it seem as though people just come out because they're inspired and that there's a catalyst, but they're not coming out because they're inspired. They're coming out partly because they're organized, and that's how they shape the discourse, on the ground. Right.
And that distinction between movements and organizations and political representation. And I think we were sort of talking about that, how you were saying earlier that potentially a lot of the movement energy and grassroots energy might actually get, for lack of a better term, like, I don't know, whitewashed, watered down into body cams and things like that, which is another interesting conversation that I'd like to have. But I wanted to talk because I teased this, and you mentioned Cedric Robinson, and you wrote the foreword to a new edition of his book, Black Marxism. And you basically say that this moment of American fascism, we could potentially learn something from Black Marxism and critiques of sort of traditional Marxism as a way to combat fascism. At least I think that's what you were saying. And maybe you want to explain what are the openings that you see there, and what is Black Marxism, I guess, very briefly. And then what are the openings? Like, how can it better equip us to confront this moment?
Right. Ask the biggest question and say very briefly.
I know.
It's okay.
Answer it in a haiku, please.
Right. Yeah. Haiku. Okay. So what we learned from Cedric Robinson, both from Black Marxism and another book called Forgeries of Memory and Meaning, is that fascism predates fascism. Simply put, that is to say that part of the intellectuals he writes about, the movements, saw fascism, saw Reconstruction as anti-fascist. If we think of slavery as a form of fascism, they saw, the indigenous people fighting in Sand Creek or Skeleton Cave, Wounded Knee as anti-fascism. Workers fighting the violence in West Virginia's coal mines as anti-fascism. And Black intellectuals in particular, fighting the prison industrial complex, is also a kind of anti-fascism. So it's expanding definition of it, which is why so many Black radicals in the 1920s had been fighting, for example, the Italian invasion of Ethiopia in 1935, but even before that, challenging Italian fascism when Forbes said Mussolini is the greatest thing that's ever happened to capitalism. And so it's very simply put that we have long lessons to learn about native fascism, even if that fascism doesn't hold state power, because we're still fighting fascism every day. And one last thing, the Capitol insurrection, which surprised a lot of people, for many of us, the same people who showed up at the Capitol were the same people in the streets in uniform fighting us. And that's the recognition.
Yep.
That's the fascism we're fighting.
Absolutely. Many of them, like a 12 to like maybe 12%, maybe more, maybe even to 30%. I forgot the latest numbers. They keep on finding more dudes who used to be or are currently in the police or armed forces who were storming the Capitol. And I think that in the same way, this is just from what you were saying earlier, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, was like, well, Antifa's more of a like ethos. It's more of a movement. He said that, and that was such a funny moment. And in the same way, like you were saying, the way BLM is sort of misrepresented as a monolith, rather than it's an ethos. Right. It's a broader movement. There are organizations that have been working on various very concrete issues around it that have contributed to it. But yeah, it's an ethos. We have to move on, but lucky for everyone watching, we are going to continue this conversation and move into talking about labor and a predominantly Black workforce in Alabama that was unsuccessful in their union drive in Bessemer in an Amazon warehouse, but that's not the end of it. So we're going to break that all down in like 10 minutes. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room is where you can go to join if you want to hear more from NATO and Robin, all about that. I'm just gonna be asking questions. So yes, go over there, patreon.com/Bitchuation Room, become a patron, and we'll be going live in 10 to 15. But we've got one final segment. We want to keep it light, just something fun. You guys, are you familiar with Yahoo questions? NATO, Robin.
I know a little bit about it, but I try to avoid Yahoo questions. Clearly.
Smart man, clearly a little too advanced for the Yahoo questions and answers.
The Yahoo answers, right?
Well, apparently it's going bye-bye. There's going to be no more Yahoo questions, but don't worry, there will still be dumb questions on the internet. But for now, we want to know, what's your Yahoo question before they go?
So my Yahoo question.
Yes.
So I have to make up one, huh?
Yeah. I could go first. Let me give you some examples.
You go first.
So here's some just for everyone in the chats, in the comments as well. Some things that people have asked Yahoo. Do you think humans will ever walk on the sun? A good one. Speaking of Christian Bale, here's a good one. Is Christian Bale a Christian since his name is Christian? I felt myself get so stupid just reading that. How do babies come out of a vagina? I think the answer to this one had something to do with butter. And then my favorite, am I turning into Taylor Swift? It was a great question. I will go first. My Yahoo question is so dumb, but I was trying to remember the name of O Fortuna. Like, oh, Fortuna. You know that song? And so I typed into Google, what's the
Carmina Burana, bro.
Carmina Burana. Yeah, Carmina.
Yes, Carmina Burana.
But that's the full name.
That's the whole piece. O Fortuna is the opening.
Whatever. See, now NATO wakes up. Now NATO's like, I'm gonna look at my phone. I don't give a shit. Now, oh, Carmina. I don't even know Fortuna. So I put in Google, what's that name of the really dramatic opera song? And that's my Yahoo question. What's the name of that dramatic opera song? And I eventually found it.
So, and that was the answer, Fortuna.
The answer was NATO.
The Carmina Burana by Karl Orff.
Okay. Carmina Burana. Carmina Burana. So, NATO, what's your dumb YouTube or your dumb Yahoo question?
Why am I itchy?
That's a good question.
So I need to come up with when I think about questions I had as a kid.
Yeah.
One is, does whipped cream hurt?
That's a good one. That is a good one.
Who's got dad jokes now?
That's great. I feel like your kid, does whipped cream hurt? That's true. There should be more work involved in whipped cream. There is if it's handmade, but okay. From the chat, is Tuxedo Chitty single? Very single, and hot if you like the Botticelli-esque bodies of a cat. How do you solve a problem like Maria? What is Maria? Hurricane Maria?
It's a West Side Story reference, I think.
Yeah, that's what
I
would think that. My wife played Maria in her junior high school stage performance.
Nice.
She's now a famous actor, but
that's how she got her start.
That's how she got started playing Maria, and I have it on a cassette tape. Her singing.
Oh, that's adorable. I'm okay. Why haven't I gotten my period yet? Solid. I asked that a lot. Track it. I still haven't tracked it. Many years, still not tracking it. Is Yahoo still a thing? Perfect. How do we drill for green energy? That's good. Just it's in the Earth's core. Like you just got to go further, and you'll get the green energy. It's there. It's below the shale gas. Just keep going, bro. Just keep going. Goodbye, Yahoo questions. And you're lovely. You're funny. Now I wish I had our pregnant video I could play for everybody, but everybody needs to go look up the Am I Pregnant video on YouTube because that shit's hilarious. Robin D.G. Kelley, we will see you in just a few minutes, but thank you so much, everyone. Stay tuned and look out for all of his books, his forthcoming book, but also please read Freedom Dreams, The Black Radical Imagination, Hammer and Hoe, Alabama Communists During the Great Depression. Listen to him, watch him, follow him. He's got great interviews, one in the LA Times. You're the best. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you both. I really appreciate it.
All right. Take good care. And NATO Green, where can people find you?
At NATO Green on Twitter, Mr. NATO Green on Instagram. Check out my albums on Bandcamp is the best way to buy them in terms of getting money to the artists. I have 2 albums up on Bandcamp. The NATO Green Party and the Whiteness album.
No big deal. They're great albums. If you haven't listened to them yet, go get them.
Soon, there's merch coming.
Really?
Yeah.
With the Wonder Bread.
The label decided to make commemorative the Wonder Bread from the Whiteness album, like enameled pins.
Oh, I love it. Ooh, yeah. I want one. Okay, get them with the hardbacks. Okay. Anyway. And thank you guys all for being here. I'm so sorry I didn't get a chance to read your questions, but I'm going, or your comments, but I'm going to right now. Anya Harris, thank you for the super chat. I can kind of envision Manchin lurking around a watery cave in West Virginia, slurping up tar like Gollum, right? Right? Like on all fours, just kind of like. I totally see that too. On QAnon, fat guy named Tiny, great name, on Twitch says genius military intelligence. That is a 3-way oxymoron. Absolutely. Also, fat guy named Tiny on BLM. That's what terrifies the establishment about BLM. It's true grassroots across all races and ages. Ooh, very, very true. Let's see. Daleks, I just realized that motherfucker has the Reagan haircut. I think we're talking about Manchin. Absolutely. Vitingale on YouTube. I'm bitching about anti-trans legislation. Honestly, like what? Why are we still doing this? Cool. Let's find more people to suppress for no reason other than we're fragile, and it's fine. It's a good. It's a great like, you know, shrill talking point. Rizzy Biz, Franny Fio, you always have such wonderful guests. Thank you, Robin, for talking about this. Capitalism couldn't be the behemoth it is without stoking racism. Yes, or in the origin story of capitalism, arguably racism and colonialism. And Tara Leah on Twitch, first time here, just want to say I have loved you on TYT for a while now. Francesca, I'm sorry it took so long, but glad to watch you on your own show. You're hysterical and fabulous. Thank you, Tara Leah. Thank you for being here. And yeah, I'm like, I accept your apology for why it took you so long to fucking find me. But now that you're here, hell yeah. Join the Frantifa. And thank you to all the super chats. Wayne Sugahara, Vincent Hernandez, Anya Harris, Zachary Fluke, Grandma Sunshine Dragon. And hey, we got Twitch subs. Brandy Lou 2, Dowlia, Kin of Wolf, Trish the Dish 1978, Antifa, love it. Deb Kint Ty, cool. Frank Morning Tree, thank you guys so much. Hell yeah. And also, if you want to tip the show, but you don't want to become a patron, that's fine. TBR-live on Venmo, TBR live on Cash App. And also, if you're listening as a podcast and you don't have a lot of money, rate the podcast. 5 stars. That's as good as money. That is money to me. I read all your reviews. It means a lot. And thanks so much to all the people who work on the show. Rebecca Rufer, Kelly Carey, Dorsey Shaw, Ellie Hoffman. And once again, we stream every Sunday, 5/8 Eastern on YouTube and Twitch, and you can listen afterwards as a podcast, like I've already mentioned. And let's just relish in the moment that John Boehner, just a man who, by 2021 standards, looks okay in his baby blue eyes and overly tan skin, getting drunk and reading out loud his audio book to anyone who'll listen. Take a listen.
You'll never know where you'll end up. That's freedom. I'll raise a glass to that any day. P.S. Ted Cruz, go fuck yourself.
John Boehner, you son of a bitch. I'll drink to that, though. Fuck Ted Cruz. And fuck you too, John. And also, fuck the patriarchy and fight the power. And don't just bitch about it. Be about it, y'all. See you next week. Bye.